What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of State Champs Michigan's Hangtime. My name is Lorne Plant, joined as always, Scott Burnstein, TJ Kelley, and we are here to bring you the 411 of what's happening in boys hoops here in the great state of Michigan. So we're going to get right into it, and we're going to start with a few shout-outs. We're going to start with my man Scott here, and you want to give a shout-out to what is Madison Heights Lanphier's new all-time leading scorer.
The scoring king for the Rams was officially anointed. The coronation was last week. Samaje Ramsey, one of the greatest athletes to ever come through the city of Madison Heights, and it's really fallen under the radar. Football and basketball, he's an all-league receiver. Four-year starter on both teams, became the all-time leading scorer for the basketball team last week. First player to ever go over 1,000 points. And I think what's most important when you're talking about Ramsey is the unselfish play, the unselfish leadership, the fact that he was the linchpin in this culture revamp, because Lamphere has been irrelevant, in all due respect to the Lamphere faithful, but on the basketball floor, Lamphere has been irrelevant for 2 decades plus. Isaiah Novak comes over, kind of learned under Mark West, who's the coach at Grove right now. He learned under him when he was at Bishop Foley, took over the program at Bishop Foley for a short period of time. Now he's at Lamphere and leads, with Ramsey being the centerpiece. He asked Samaje when he came in there 2 years ago. Samaje was averaging 17, 18 points a game as a freshman, as a sophomore. I believe he got a U of D offer pretty early on in his career and was putting up a lot of points, but they weren't winning.
Right.
And then Coach Novak said, how about we dial that back a little bit? You're only going to score about maybe 14, 15 a game, but you're going to have more assists, you're going to have more rebounds, and the team's going to flourish. And they have first winning season in league play since I think 2001. And if you ask Novak and you ask anybody in that program, the straw that stirs the drink is Samaje Ramsey. And it's just a credit to Coach Novak and the attitude of putting the team and the program ahead of himself with Ramsey. So I'm not sure about his qualification status for next year. There's a good chance he might go the community college route, but I think for a guy that's 6'3", about 185, plays a combo guard spot, even football as a wide receiver, he could be someone that could help, I think, a Division I or Division II program. But I think in a couple years, there's a good chance that you'll see him either in the GLIAC or somewhere down the line playing basketball.
So it's fair to say that throughout the state champs era, first time we're really talking up Ram basketball. But that's all right. We've been talking football and the resurgence that they've had over the last few years. We cover the baseball team, got Adam Woolley and his program.
Woolley was running, I think that was actually, all due respect to Woolley, he was one of the greatest baseball coaches I've ever covered. Yeah. But Woolley was pulling double duty, coaching basketball as well as baseball.
Well, he's the AD now.
Right.
So
I think, once they got a basketball guy in there and, someone that had a blueprint and learned from someone like Coach West, I think, the sky's the limit for that program.
All right, well, let's move on. Just a couple more shout-outs. E-Course has a couple career scores that have reached some landmarks. The senior Malik Olafoye has surpassed 2,000 points. His teammate Kenneth Morass Jr. just netted his 1,000th career point. TJ, what do you think about E-Course and their future here as we get set for playoffs?
Well, obviously one of the best backcourts in the state when you have to talk about Morass and Olafoye, both seniors. I think that this being their senior year, how they went out last year in the semifinals, neither one of them had a great game. I think that as a senior, you always feel like your back's against the wall and you have something to prove. I know that I was there playing sports as a high school kid back in the 20th century, but I don't think things have changed and stuff like that. But yeah, you talk about Olafoye scoring 2,000 points. He did it in 79 games, so you're averaging over 25 points a game. And then you had Kenny Morass. That combination right there, they're deadly. And when you talk about either one of them can go off, they're definitely a threat. I expect for them to get through districts. And by the time they get to regionals, I think, that DEPSA, Loyola, I'm not sure who else is going to be in the other district. But yeah, they're definitely going to have their hands full. But they're prepared for it. And that's what, as seniors, and not only that, as leaders, guys that have really bought into the system, I think that they'll make Gerard Abram happy as the head coach.
Yeah, there's excitement there.
I love Malik Olafoye. I think sometimes the e-course faithful have gotten the wrong idea with some of the stuff that I've written or said when I haven't listed him in my Mr. Basketball.
Clear the air.
My power index from Mr. Basketball.
Yeah.
I have been following Malik since he was a freshman. The guy can get buckets like very few other people in the state.
He can dunk with the best of them, I will say that.
But I'll say, in terms of my thinking on Mr. Basketball, the same thing I was saying about Brother Rice with Curtis Williams, and it's no disrespect to Curtis Williams, but when you play on a team with other really good players, it's unfortunately going to recede from some of your opportunities maybe for, not that he's not getting big stats, but I look at what Kenny Morass is doing, it's like in some ways it's taken away from Malik's chance at Mr. Basketball. That's no shame. I mean, they're winning
Morass
games.
had 36
right, they're
the
winning
other night.
games. They're both guys that in theory could be in that race.
Yeah. So as long as they can share the ball and figure out
And at the end of the
who's
day,
hot, who's not in the playoffs.
I'd much rather, if I'm e-course, I'd much rather, and it's easy for me to talk about. I'm not the one who wants the Mr. Basketball trophy on my mantle, but it's a lot easier. In my mind, it's like you guys have a chance to do something special. In your state tournament right now.
Focus on that.
And at the end of the day, whether you win Mr. Basketball or in the Mr. Basketball race or not, you guys get to Breslin Center. Nobody will ever forget the names Malik Olafor and Kenny Morass in that part of town.
And personally, it will give them a great stage in order for colleges to see how they perform.
That, and I also think that one of the things is a lot of, let's say, Mr. Basketball voters, they did see the semifinal game.
They did.
And, unfortunately, Malik didn't have his greatest game. And that's the stage where you go out and present yourself to the entire state, to the voters.
Fair or not, that's the stage.
And it is what it is. And sometimes, the first impression that some guys have as far as voters, just in life, that's what you're going to go for, and then you need a little bit of convincing to be swayed the other way. I don't know, hopefully Malik's senior year will sway some voters, to at least be in the Final Five. And, who's to say what the Free Press, we are not the Free Press. So we will see what happens.
He's electric. I mean, the guy who jumps on the floor, you might as well just throw in 25, and then whatever you get it left, anything over 25 is gravy because you can just pencil it in for him. And when you have that kind of consistency, sometimes you take it for granted.
Right. All right. Well, let's talk about another player who's been very consistent in his career, and that is Grand Rapids Catholic Junior's Fat Brooks.
Best nickname in the state, and it didn't come from me.
That's right. Jarrell Brooks surpassed over 1,000 points over the weekend. He's got a lot of offers, some big schools, including Michigan State and Michigan. But this is a guy who has been taking the load more and more, and
blasted on the scene early. We knew about him as a freshman.
We did, and I think he's kind of that straw right now that's stirring the drink for GRCC.
Well, don't forget how Grand Rapids Catholic Central first started the season. I think they were 1-3, and since then, I think they have one loss since then. And so when I'm looking at 1 or 2 losses since then, but the thing is,
talk about that a little bit later.
But the thing is, they're learning to adapt. They're learning how to play in different roles. I still think that they have, and arguably they have the top backcourt in the state with Fat Brooks, and then also Caden Brown, who's going to Wright State.
Not too shabby.
Not too shabby. Not too shabby at all.
Who's got all the records GRCC.
Without a doubt. And so. But the thing is, to see guys evolve. College coaches are looking to see, hey, we're not looking for you to be the same player as a freshman as you were a sophomore. We want you to be better. And then sophomore to junior year, we want you to be more of a leader. We need you to go and put your arm around some sophomores. We need you to be out there and take the tips like Fat's doing to start the games and stuff like that. And when you really look at it, he's the top prospect in the junior class. I mean, you could say Dylan Grant is right there as well from Warren Michigan Collegiate. But I think that it's going to be possibly a semifinal or a final that we wind up seeing in Class B, and that'd be Grand Rapids Catholic Central and Warren Michigan Collegiate. And wow, that'd be great. And this is class in 2024 here in Michigan is absolutely loaded. And we'll be. I look forward to, let's say the next 300. Or let's say 400 days and stuff like that, we'll be able to talk about those guys that much more.
And they are very used to that big stage and very hungry to get back on that stage after last year.
Just one final recruiting note. When we're talking about guys like Samaje or Malik and Kenny, well, Fat is a blue chipper. But these other guys are, they haven't found a landing spot yet. For their college basketball. And all I'll say, and this is to anybody, whether you're a blue chip kid or you're a kid that's just looking to walk on a Division III program, a coach that's coming to see you, someone like Malik Olafoy, they're not coming to see you drop 30. They know you can drop 30. Like, they wouldn't be in the gym if you couldn't drop 30.
Right.
So, there's so much else that goes into it, body language, the way you, like TJ said, putting your arm around a teammate and telling it. So, that's for everybody. It's not just for the people here. So, I think we're talking about having a big stage when you hit Breslin Center. And I don't think that stage is necessarily, you need to go out and drop a 50 ball. You just need to go out and show that you're a well-rounded player, that you approach the game in the right way, you play the game in the right way, and the chips will fall into order and you'll get yourself a scholarship.
And the thing about Fat, when I've talked to college coaches, so he got his offer from Michigan State, I think it was in the semifinal of last year.
Yeah.
And I think they beat Ferndale. But however that winds up going, don't forget how Fat finished consistently, whether he was challenged. Like, he wasn't going in for layups. He was going in to finish. And Izzo's right there. Coach Izzo's right there along with his staff. And so he gets to see that. The thing that stands out about what he does more than anything else is his defense. He's long. He's got instincts as far as being able to jump towards passes, just being able to be a ball hawk, which guys are looking at, college coaches are saying, like more to what Scott was saying. We know you can score. We know you can do these other things. But you know what? That kid plays hard. He can go out there and he can defend like no other. And you know what? That's consistent. If I have a sprained ankle if I have a sprained wrist or something like that, I got a busted hand or something like that, that's really not going to impact my defense. So I can still be out there and be a force. I'm not going to be maybe the scorer that I was, but I can definitely be that defender that you're looking for, and that's what really leads to championships. And I don't know, there are many people that are going out there saying offense wins championships.
Right. It leads to scholarships.
It leads to scholarships.
Exactly. And if you remember right, in that semifinal, that was, if I'm correct, that was Karazinski's incredible game, right? That he had. That semi's performance, all eyes were on him, but Fat was doing the dirty work and doing what was needed to allow Karazinski to have the game.
Yeah, Curtis Williams is the number one ranked player in the senior class, not because he scores 30, because he's the best perimeter defender, in the Midwest. So it really has nothing to do with, for Curtis, and the fact that he's a blue chip, it really has nothing to do with his offense. Right. I mean, he's a great shooter, but it's because of his defense.
And he's having a solid season at William and Mary. And the other thing about him is they knew what they were going to get from him. They knew that they were going to get somebody who was going to play hard. They knew that they were going to get somebody that was going to stick their nose maybe where it doesn't belong. And then I'm saying that in a good way. I'm going to go out there and get some rebounds. Right. I'm going to go out there and hit the floor. I'm going to go out there and do a lot of things.
Charge, fired up.
I'll give you a perfect example. I went and saw Okamus. And they've got a freshman. His name should be familiar. His dad should be familiar. And that's Kelvin Torbert Jr. Yeah. First, he comes in immediately, knocks down a three, picks up at half court, almost gets a steal, but then dives on the ground. We see seniors that don't do that. And here we have a freshman who's let's say this, his dad is very well known. People are lofting him up and all that stuff. Sure. And I'm looking at him that went into my notes immediately. I've seen many guys hit threes, but I don't see guys going out there to look to immediately defend, and then you go hit the floor for a loose ball. And right there, that's the little things that separate the blue chippers versus really good high school basketball players.
Bronny James, and this is out of our coverage district, but LeBron James' son, Bronny, he jumped up 15 or 20 spots in his rankings in the national rankings over the last month. Because of defense. It has nothing to do with him being LeBron's kid or being able to score a lot of points.
Right. Mm-hmm. Preaching and pontificating presented by Kelley and Burnstein.
Yes.
All right, I love that. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, let's move on and let's get into a little bit of some of the coverage we had here on the State Champs Sports Network over the last several days. Last weekend, Friday, we had a matchup that you can watch clips on right now. You can check it out on State Champs Michigan's Instagram. You can watch some stuff on TikTok, on Facebook, YouTube, whatever your preference is. Flat Rock and Riverview. Riverview won that game 44-41, which put them into a tie for first in the Huron League.
They're red hot.
Right. They both won on Tuesday, meaning Flat Rock and Riverview, so they are tied round. But Riverview, like you said, 9 in a row have been rolling. It looked like Flat Rock was just going to take this one. I believe that I don't know if they have another championship game or something. I think they're just co-champs because it looked, from what I looked at the schedule, it looks like they were just scheduling
I don't think they have
just non-league teams from there on out. But again, shout out to them, and we'll see how they do moving on Grand Rapids West Catholic and Fruitport got together. It was the Ogdal awareness game, and it was Fruitport who won 55-37. Trojans found themselves trailing 17-4 early in the contest, came back to take a 1-point lead just by the end of the first. So they got hot, never slowed down. Very impressive win, and that was in the OK Blue. On Saturday, we had number 4 Grand Blanc beating number 5 Muskegon in overtime, 70-62. So congratulations to Grand Blanc, who wins their second straight undisputed SBO championship.
One thing about R.J. Taylor, and I know that people have said, oh, well, he hasn't done this. He had Ty Rodgers on his team when he won a championship. And I kind of look at it like, yeah, but he wound up going to the finals without Ty Rodgers.
You talk
he
about
defends
the
the home.
Energizer Bunny. Oh,
and you talk about somebody who makes teammates better. And there's that's what college coaches look. That's what wins games, is point guards who can get others involved. I'm giving you encouragement. Hey, we're talking on defense. The little things that you're reminding guys about, and you're making winning plays.
And he can drop 30.
And he can drop 30.
And dive on the floor.
And he's a natural leader, and he's a great facilitator.
Yes.
Yep, a great floor general.
Right. So, I mean, that checks every box they're looking for.
Yeah.
If
Grand
they're
Blanc,
looking
I think, is going to be dangerous, and he is the main reason. He is the X factor.
Let's not forget about Tay Boyd, too. I think that
Yes,
Tay Boyd is the X factor of X factors.
No doubt. And another thunder dunker. So beautiful.
Talk about Sunday.
Yeah. PSL championship. We talked about King. Would they be able to get to the championship? They did, and they gave them a game.
Oh my God! What
it took overtime,
battle.
74-70 in overtime.
It's a slugfest.
Cass Tech beating King.
They came back from 15. Cass came back from 15 down in the last 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you look at I thought there were a couple of major factors there. I think George Ward did a great job, head coach for King, did a great job of game planning. Obviously, Cass King being huge rivals, so you have to look at that, schedules and records out the door. But then you look at, and not only that.
And their first meeting was lopsided, right?
Yeah, it was pretty.
Yeah.
You know what? I think it might have been a little bit closer than. I think it was a little bit closer.
Okay.
But you know what? They're also in the same district, which is loaded district. You talk about River Rouge, you talk about Western, even Dearborn Fordson, who probably have a Division I player in what they have with Muhammad Habhab. But then you also have. So there's a chance that they play 3 times, and it's. And I know they always talk about it in pro sports and in college, but it's hard to beat a team playing 3 times. And not only that, if John Coffey doesn't foul out of that game, who was pretty much the anchor and getting buckets when he won it in the paint, when he wound up fouling out, they kind of took away some of the energy, even though, King did have their backup, came in there and did some things. At the same time, Chaz Lulis, I thought, played phenomenally.
I like Kenny King.
Yep, Kenny King.
I didn't really know about him.
Yep.
And he really, really impressed me.
Yep. But then you also see, I forgot what the running back's name was, going to Grand Valley State.
Jameel?
Yep.
Crawford?
Yep. But when
Jameel Croft.
Yeah. Yep. I think it was him that he
pulled that one out.
He fouled Lulis.
Yeah.
And Lulis is, he's leaving that all out on the floor, which you're supposed to do in big games. And it seemed like kind of like after that foul, Coffee fouling out, and it seemed to be about 30 seconds, 45 seconds within that, it kind of sucks some energy out of that. And at the same time, you got the super soft Darius Acuff, who goes for 22 points in the last.
Forget about it, man.
8 minutes, 4 minutes of overtime, 4 minutes of regulation.
He's announced his presence with authority.
Knocked the 3 down like it was a layup, to tie the game.
He has made a statement that I'm the best sophomore in the state.
Yes, that's right.
You guys can sit there and debate it, but I know that I am. I'm the front runner for Mr. Basketball 2025.
You hung around. Good on you.
Yep.
But wow, is Cheeks Acuff a breath of fresh air? Yeah. Is he dynamic? I mean, it's just.
Why do they call him Cheeks?
Because he's got big cheeks and you saw him when he was a little kid. No, I'm messing around.
I'm
messing around. Yeah,
There's been a lot of.
He's a kid that I've seen around in the gym watching his
It's a legacy family, though.
Stuff like that.
There's been. I want to say at least a half dozen Acuffs that have come through either Cass or
I thought
King.
maybe it was an homage to Maurice Cheeks.
Right. Hey, well, being a point guard, I might be. I have to ask Pops.
All right. Some more games you can catch on the State Champs Network. You never know what's going to come out of our mouths. Riverview, Gabriel Richard, Lutheran North got together in the Catholic League semifinal, and it was Gabriel Richard won that one, 68-52. On Tuesday, East English and E-Course, we talked about the performances and the career scoring points for Olafoye and others. So 91-54 was the final in that one, and Malik had 28, 13, and 6 steals. New Haven and Grosse Pointe South got together in the MAC Red-White semifinal, and South won that one 62-50. They're moving on to the championship. We talked about South last week. Yep.
For the Bernards,
undefeated in
Carter
league play.
Richards, and I can see them raising a trophy very soon.
Yeah.
And just kind of cementing this team. I mean, I think there's a lot more to do, but this team, just in terms of winning that MAC red and white, which I think they're going to do. I think they're going to beat Eisenhower when they play him for the championship.
Yeah.
But it's something that's just kind of like it's going to solidify that group, and I think that's really going to give them a lot of momentum going into
I'll say this, even going forward into March. I'm not sure when the last time Grosse Pointe South won their district, and they have a really strong chance this year because De La Salle's coming down and they're playing at Hamtramck.
Yeah.
The Detroit teams, let's say this, the powerhouse Detroit teams, they're in a completely different district. And so Grosse Pointe South, Grosse Pointe North, I think Roseville, and then you have a few other teams. Roseville might give them a run. Grosse Pointe North just being a rival team, they might give them a little battle. But, I think that Stephen Bernard as a head coach winds up winning the first district. I'm not sure in how long. We can look at
the Steve Champagne years from the late '90s.
Yeah, we can look at Michael Bramos, from Grosse Pointe North, who wound up making a run. But we haven't really talked about Grosse Pointe South. And when you look at
walked down at Michigan from Grosse Pointe South.
And when you look at the banners, you go to Grosse Pointe South.
Yeah.
You have nothing but girls' banners there.
Right. Yeah.
And it would be great. And I think that. I'm not saying that they're going to wind up beating De La Salle or anything like that, but you know what? I think that he's so battle tested, Anthony Bernard. And you talk about another guy who maybe sacrificed some points for winning, which maybe cost him the Mr. Basketball as well. But I think that maybe he's a guy that should definitely be in that running, and obviously a great two-sport star who's going to go play basketball down at Mercer.
Well, the rivalry between Grand Rapids South Christian and Grand Rapids Catholic Central named the sport because in football it was South who finally was able to upend Catholic Central. South goes and wins a state championship in football. Entering Tuesday night's game, the 15th ranked Grand Rapids Catholic Central Cougars had a 75-game winning streak in the OK Gold Conference. Hadn't played a game without being in sole possession of first place in the standings since 2017. But after an 82-54 loss, 82-54 to number 17 Grand Rapids South Christian, that streak is no more. They are both now tied for the OK Gold League, with Catholic Central holding the tiebreaker. And Catholic Central has been in this situation before. It had a team that included Jacob Polikovich and future Michigan State star Marcus Bingham Jr. That team was blown out by Godwin Heights, then went on to make the state finals. Yep. Catholic Central still controls its own destiny despite the loss. It can still clinch the gold title with a win over Kennewick Hills Friday night. But this really is about South Christian and what they were able to do.
And we've talked about South Christian, and I was kind of thinking about it as I'm looking at some of the old replays. We've talked about David Kuhl. We've talked about Vermas. We've talked about Carson Viss and some of the other guys, the young players that they have on that team, just being multi-sport athletes. I haven't brought up Taylor Johnson, who's a first-year head coach at Grand Rapids South Christian. Long time, well, let's say not a long time because he's not that old and stuff like that, so I'm not going to say he's, let's say this, long time for if you're 30 years old, but he's, he's been an assistant coach for 6 or 7 years under Rick Wesley, who just stepped down at Grand Valley State. And so hats off to Taylor Johnson, who I think has done a fantastic job. Really a guy who's earned his bones, and, he's really shown it. And again, I love how the depth of the Grand Rapids area, like how they're beating up on each other, and you have to show up for every single game. And I think that that's one of the things, iron sharpens iron. And so who are we going to see at the Breslin? Might be South Christian. I mean, we might be Catholic Central again, but there are a lot of teams in Division II. Might be Grand Rapids
That
Christian.
Grand Rapids area has kind of replaced the Flint area as that when you get out of Detroit and you want to go see, Metro Detroit, go up north or go out west and see some really competitive league play and games where you go on a Friday night and it's like last one out of the town square, turn the lights off, and everybody's in the gym. I just think it's a real renaissance for basketball and really for football too in the Grand Rapids area. There's a lot of really, really great athletes, great teams, great coaches in the last handful of years, and I think it's only it's only going to get better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we have. I think legitimately in the 2024 class, you could have 5 or 6 Division I players that are coming out of Grand Rapids, and there was a period where there weren't any.
Yeah.
And I mean, it only might have been 2 or 3 years, but then you had like Marcus Bingham, and you had like
and the scouts are aware
Lamar
of it.
Norman and Marquise Hastings and a few other guys. But now when you're talking about more than a handful of guys, and many of those guys have Division I offers right now. So
Before it was like you leave Detroit, you go to Pontiac, you go to Saginaw, you go to Flint.
What about Southfield?
And now it's like you leave. I'm at Metro Detroit.
Yeah, no.
You leave Metro Detroit, and the first place you're going to scout basketball talent is the Grand Rapids area, the west side of the state.
Yeah, and that's they've come a long way. Speaking of great, and maybe the greatest coach in the state that you don't know is the gentleman who is doing his thing at Jackson High School. So the Jackson Vikings, 16-4, they just beat Chelsea. They are now the Southeastern Conference white champions. They've come a long way in a short time. This gentleman took over the team in 2019. His name is Milton Barnes. But when you look into what he has done over his career as a coach, it's literally unbelievable. I'm going to encourage you to go and check out our podcast, our Chalk Talk podcast that you can find on Spreaker.com. We've got the entire interview up on YouTube if you want to check it out visually. We're going to show you a little sample of what it is, but I just want to put it in perspective that this is a man who played at Saginaw in the 70s, only started high school as a junior, was able to make tremendous strides, played at Albion College, was able to get to the Final Four in Division III in the 80s, went on to become an assistant coach first at Albion, many other schools.
Went to a Final Four as an assistant in Minnesota.
Yes.
He was Clem Haskins' #1.
Yes, exactly. He then went on, I'm fast forwarding here. You've got to watch the entire conversation. Actually came back to high school and was able to do well. But the GM and coach of the Harlem Globetrotters in the year 2000, which is amazing, went on to coach national teams in Nigeria and Senegal, the U.S. Virgin Islands, was a scout in the NBA for like 10 years, came back, was the head coach at Eastern Michigan.
I would say the crowning achievement of his coach, of his head coaching career, was that '98 Eastern Michigan team that went. I believe they went to a Sweet 16. They had a backcourt of 2 guys that went and played in the NBA: Earl Boykins, Derek Dial, and Milton Barnes had taken over for Ben Braun, who had left for the Cal job the year before, and had a great run. And was at Cleveland State, I believe, as a head coach as well.
Yeah.
And just he's been everywhere on the map. Right. He's had success everywhere he's gone.
Yeah. So Milton has come back. He came back to Albion, which is where he always wanted to come back. He has a lot of great things he's doing for the community, and I think it's his Playwright Sports group that he's got. So here's a little sample of what we talked about, but again, I encourage you to check it all out. I like to always leave a little room for some shout-outs. Talk about some of the playmakers maybe on your team, some of the guys that have really been playing well for you this season.
Our top guys have been, but one of the things I've stressed all year long, that's what makes us so, I think, dangerous, is that we get contributions from a lot of players.
All right.
But obviously, game in and game out, people are going to prepare for Savon Campbell, who I think is a college prospect. I think will be a really good player wherever he goes to college. Terrell White, who's one of our best shooters, if not the best shooter on our team. And Tavion Tanner, who's a dual sport athlete, football and basketball. He's going to Siena Heights to play college football. Nice. Tyler Selby, who's been a quiet hero. He was the hero of the game last night. He made the winning bucket.
Nice.
So I'm real proud of him. And so we get so many other contributions, and I tell guys every little bit helps. And that's the case with our team. And guys have bought in on that, and they understand that it's not just our top scorers, but everyone can and must contribute every game. And that's our goal, and that's what we were able to accomplish last night.
All right, so once again, thank you, Coach Barnes, and good luck to your Jackson Vikings as they get set, which could be, who knows, an impressive run. They're in the Holt District. It's going to be tough. Schools like Okemos and Holt, who had beat them earlier, but again.
That 98 EMU team had a player from your neck of the woods out in Plymouth, James Head.
Yes.
James Head and Theron Wilson were the front court. representing Salem and Dondero.
Yes, I remember.
Royal Oak, Dondero.
Yeah.
I remember seeing Theron Wilson, and back then you can go in the newspaper and you can see stats. And
That was a really good. That was a really good team in '98.
So I was in high school, and I'm like, all right, because my buddies and I, we'd go see Chris Webber. We'd go, just living, going to Southfield Latham, wasn't that far away and stuff like that. We go around Dondero. We left at halftime, and he had a triple-double. Be like, yeah, these stats are for real, because we know Dondero. And we had intramural teams at Southfield Latham.
People might not remember that Dondero was a high school in Royal Oak.
Yeah.
It's been closed for probably about 20 years.
Yeah.
But at one point, there were 2 high schools in Royal Oak.
Yep.
Actually, where it stands now has been renamed Glen Fry Drive.
No way.
The former Eagles, not Eagles Sports,
Right.
Eagles the rock group.
Yes.
And he went to Dondero, and they named the street after him. But Theron Wilson was probably the last great Dondero athlete. Came over from Detroit King.
Yeah, it was Dondero and Kimball.
Kimball, yeah.
Yep.
But that 98 Milton Barnes EMU team was a special group. A lot of kids from the area. I believe John Zajac was on that team, who had won played for Essler. Played for Essler. I think he was on that 98. I could be wrong.
Yep.
Played for Essler at St. Clair Shores, Lakeshore with Travis Conlon. So
And those Saginaw teams of the 70s, the 80s, even then, we did I mentioned this in the podcast. We did a documentary on the rivalry between Saginaw, Arthur Hill, and Saginaw. Well, back then it was not a rivalry. Saginaw won every single year for a couple of decades.
And then as a player, Barnes was on one of the best Albion teams ever,
Right.
playing under Mike Turner.
Yep, exactly.
They went to a Final Four. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Division III Final Four. So go check it out. Again, you can find it on Spreaker.com. Just look up State Champs Network. Or you can find it on our YouTube page or our Facebook page, because it really is a great interview, I think. Not just because I did it, I'm just saying because he is a fascinating story, and I hope he continues to coach for a long time.
I would have loved to play for someone like that.
Yes. All right, let's get into our top 20 rankings. Only a couple more of these. Next week will be your last one.
Mm-hmm.
So TJ does our rankings each week. You can find them at statechampsnetwork.com. Just click on rankings. We're doing our Super 20 this season in honor of State Champs being 20 years old this year. And so the changes that we saw, UD Jesuit moved from number 6 to number 5. They beat Warren Fitzgerald. Muskegon drops to 6 after losing to Grand Blanc. Ann Arbor Huron sneaks into the top 10 with wins over Monroe and Pioneer. Warren Lincoln drops out of the top 10 from 7 to 11. And Lansing Waverly now at number 20. Port Huron Northern now on the outside looking in.
Yeah, with Port Huron Northern and Tyler Jamison, being a little hurt, not playing at 100%. That was, I guess you could consider it an upset, losing to Utica Eisenhower. And so I kind of factor that in without a doubt. And so yeah. So,
good
but
win,
I think Lansing Waverly, Rod Watts is doing a fantastic job. I know in our initial hang time that we did talk about Lansing Waverly, and I think that they're starting to gel a little bit more. They've got Roberts, they've got Pfeiffer, and then you've got Welsh as well, who's doing a fantastic job. But yeah, they're starting to click at the right time. And the other thing about Oakham is, I dropped them out a couple weeks ago because they lost back-to-back, and it seems like Grand Ledge has their number. And so until they get over that hurdle, I think that Lansing Waverly's should be represented from the Lansing area.
Yep. So we'll have rankings next week, and then we'll probably have your final rankings then right before district starts. So we'll actually have 2 more rankings before we get out of here. But we'll see if Cass Tech can stay on top.
Yeah, well, they're going to probably more than, let's say that. I'm not going to say anything about the UAD Jesuit Brother Rice game, which I think is going to be a nail biter. That's Friday night.
Well, yeah.
What
a great preview, because we're going to get into that right now. Exactly. Let's talk about what you can check out this weekend as we get ready to close the show. This is what we do each and every week, and we've got some championships going on in the Catholic League. So the Cardinal Championship game will be on Friday. The matchup showcases Detroit Loyola, who's 19-1 and the regular season intersectional 1 division champion, which is what they are, versus Riverview Gabriel Richard, the regular season AA division champion. So Loyola in the championship game, first time since 2012, which surprised me. They won a Catholic League championship back in 2010. So, Gabriel Richard in pursuit of their 4th straight.
Yeah, Coach Dick does a really good job and doesn't people don't mention him when they're talking
No.
about best coaches in the Catholic League, but he just has that pioneer group just churning along.
Yeah, a lot of focus on hockey for that school.
But
and
they're
rightfully
a
so.
machine. They play
Yeah.
very fundamental.
Let's not forget, they went to the semifinals last year.
Yes, they did.
And the thing is, he did it with a strong group of freshmen.
Yeah.
And those guys are now sophomores. Loyola, I imagine, if I were to pick the two, which I am,
Yeah.
I'm going to say Loyola's going to win that.
Yeah.
But then, Gabriel Richard, Father Gabriel Richard at Riverview,
Yeah.
I am looking for them to be the favorites to win in junior year. Or next year, next season, and then the following season, just because they have so much depth. And they're battle tested because they've been to the Breslin.
Right.
They've seen it. All right, we need to do this. And sometimes when you get a taste, you get a little bit hungrier if you haven't had enough.
And Chris came up in the Catholic League. I'm pretty sure he played at Orchard Lake St. Mary's, and kind of takes on that, Orchard Lake St. Mary's kind of swagger when he brings it down to the smaller Catholic League schools, because just like St. Mary's, that team comes out, they play disciplined basketball, they play fundamental basketball, everybody's engaged. He has command of that huddle. Those kids carry themselves like winners on and off the floor. So I really want to give a tip of the hat to Chris Dayek, who does a really good job at that program and doesn't get enough accolades.
The Catholic League Bishop Championship, Brother Rice, U of D Jesuit. Brother Rice has not been in the championship game since '99.
Well, no, that's I don't want to.
Go ahead.
You want to say Brian Grant?
No, they were in the Catholic League Championship 2 years ago. They lost at the buzzer to Sonny Wilson. That was their first time back since '99.
Okay. So they haven't won since 1990.
They haven't won it since '90.
Okay, so this was actually information I grabbed from the Catholic League proper, the press release that came out.
You said Dick Michaels is wrong?
No, but I want to just clarify, because I'm not trying to call Lorne out or call.
Yeah.
That was a weird year, if you remember. That was the pandemic year.
Right.
And the season was kind of going
Yeah,
in and out.
okay.
So I remember
maybe they mean traditionally.
They didn't really have the traditional tournament, because
Right.
I remember
I
St.
got you.
Mary's was the number one team in the Catholic League that year, but they didn't.
Yeah.
They dropped out because of COVID.
Right.
So they just kind of put together.
Got it. Okay.
And
So
it wasn't held at Callahan.
so
it was held at U of D.
We're putting an asterisk next to this, but regardless, they beat UD Jesuit twice this season. Yes. Can they do it again?
Again, you're playing a team 3 times. You've already beat them twice. It's tough to beat a team like that. Sonny Wilson, whenever he's out on the court, he's going to give the Cubs a chance. Whenever you have Pat Donnelly as a coach, they're going to have a chance. Yeah. Obviously, they've got a ton of other help that's around Ryan Hatcher. You've got Xavier, the big guy in the middle, and you've also got some other guys who are also helping.
Leroy Blyden,
the sophomore.
Looking real nice.
Yep, looking real nice. He will more than likely supplant Sonny as the floor general his sophomore junior year. But yeah, they've really got a chance to beat Brother Rice, and if they do, then hats off to them. If they don't, then we're going to have quite an Operation Friendship with Castech and Brother Rice when you talk about number 1 and number 3 teams. And I'll tell you this, whoever wins that game is going to be number 1.
Yeah. So the first game's at 6, and the Rice game will be at 7:30 p.m. So
and I think the most impressive thing about
Yeah.
this Rice group that's
Yeah.
19-1 right now
Yeah.
is they lost a starter in the offseason, Henry Garrity, who was a Division I level player, one of the best shooters in the area.
No doubt.
I believe he's going to go play football at Notre Dame as a walk-on. But, didn't miss a beat. The Notre Dame baseball recruit, Chase Van Almeida, comes in and starts, and Warren Marshall comes in and steps up his game. And I just think that they had that. It was a big 3, but it was actually kind of a big 4 with Garrity. And Garrity is kind of having to cheer from the sidelines, and they're playing for him, they're playing for each other. But it just shows you what Rick Palmer has been able to build there, and it's not shocking. When he walked in the door 5 years ago, it was only a matter of time before they were either hoisting a Catholic League championship trophy or were playing for it. So he's done everything he was supposed to do, and I just think it was a great job by this team to stay focused without Garrity. They lost their best shooter, and then there's only one basketball to go around for a lot of kids that are going to play in college. And that locker room, just like Rick Palmer's mentor, Kurt Keener, who's the Zen master of of the MHSAA, the Phil Jackson of the
Hall of Famer.
MHSAA. The best thing that he was able to do as the coach of Country Day all those years was keep a happy locker room with all these blue chippers. And Rick has that same magic touch where those kids are not fighting, they're not jealous of each other, they're not arguing over Mr. Basketball. They just want to go out there, win, put Brother Rice back on the map, and that's what they're doing.
Call your shot. First title in 33 years?
Yeah, I'm saying it. Brother Rice wins.
Yeah, I definitely think that they obviously they have the talent. I think that, and not only that, they've learned to play with each other, like as much like Scott has said. And it's not one of those where you shot the ball 3 times in a row, and I know you made 3 threes. It's my turn.
They got a couple kids coming off the bench.
They've really matured.
That are like kids that will never even think about playing Division I college basketball. They're coming in hitting 45% from 3-point range.
Yep. We know this. It's going to be a barn burner. It's going to be electric. The fans are going to be into it. The kids are going to be into it, and this can really set the table for what's going to be a gauntlet of a playoff.
I mean, we've got a great weekend of hoops.
Yes. All right, so, and let's get back to it too. MAC championships are Saturday, February 25th at Warren Fitzgerald High School. Silver bronze title at noon, Madison Heights Madison, who we talked about against St. Clair Shores Lakeview. The blue gold title, Warren Fitzgerald, and number 11 Warren Lincoln. That's at 2 p.m. The red-white title, Grosse Pointe South and Utica Eisenhower at 4. The 3-1-3 Classic is at Warren Lincoln. Warren Lincoln's not in that event because they're playing for the MAC championship. But that is also Saturday, 12 p.m. Detroit Public Safety versus Farmington. 1:30, OLSM versus River Rouge. 3 o'clock, E-Course versus Detroit UPrep. 4:30, number 13, Warren De La Salle versus Detroit Western. 6 o'clock, number 16, Ferndale versus Detroit Renaissance. 7:30, Hamtramck versus Chandler Park Academy.
It's a loaded lineup. E-Course is playing UPrep Arts and Design.
Oh, that's right. Sorry. Okay.
It's not UPrep with Xander Wedlow. DJ Clark has done a fantastic job. He was assistant coach under George Ward.
Okay.
And so one thing I always like to see, you talk about mentors, I love to see coaching trees and guys that are saying, they can look around, they can say, oh yeah, this guy, and all of a sudden you see in the links. It's kind of like when we talked about with Negocian and then John Jokai and, obviously tons of other guys.
The coaching branches.
Yeah, George Ward coached for Ben Kelso. You know what I'm saying? They're talk about Hall of Famers and the history that goes along. And like I always try to tell kids, and I think it goes also back to what Milton Barnes has done with his resume, this is something that you can be involved in the rest of your life. Yeah. You don't have to be a Division I player. You don't have to be a Division II player. You don't really even have to play in college. You can go be a student manager, a grad assistant, and stuff like that. And you know what? They give you money so that you don't have to pay. So if you can't get a scholarship doing this and doing that, well, you know what? If you really love it, you can go be a team manager. And who's to say? You could be look at the Van Gundy brothers, come on.
My roommate from college.
Even Jeff Van Gundy, that's the one who played Division III.
Well, my roommate in college at IU,
he didn't get off his. Come on.
My roommate in college started as a manager at Indiana. Now he's the head coach at University of California, Santa Barbara. So, one thing I'll just want to add as we sign off.
Yes.
For players that I don't think we've talked about on here, we've definitely talked about his dad in the past, kind of doing that old school, new school thing. At Farmington, Greg Grays Jr. or Greg Grays GG3, maybe I think it might be.
Okay.
His dad was Greg Grays, the famous bucket getter at Southfield Lathrop, TJ's alma mater.
Yes.
Took them to the state championship game where they lost to Saginaw in 1996 with Mike Chappelle, who eventually played at Duke, won a national championship with Michigan State.
Still burned.
But GG3 can get buckets like Papa.
Yeah.
He's only a freshman. He's averaging 18. I think this is a kid in the next couple of years is going to be putting up 25, 30 a night. Everybody's going to know him. He's going to bring Farmington's program back under great coach Derek McDowell.
Yep.
So, this year there's some growing pains getting everybody on the same page, but I think there's something special brewing there. They play at 12 o'clock. Yeah. Go check out Greg Gray's number 3 because he's a special player and has a lot of daddy's sizzle.
All right. Well, and if I'm correct, and don't quote me, but I believe the district assignments are given out this weekend. So I think on Sunday we're going to know who's playing who in the district, so you can check MHSAA.com on Monday and find out who's going where. So Districts begin March 6th. We'll have
exciting.
another show next week. We'll talk about these championships, and we'll give you a playoff preview as we get ready to run out here the rest of the season here on Hangtime. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week.
State Champs, Michigan's Hangtime is presented by Lawrence Technological University. Visit LTUathletics.com and recruit yourself. Hangtime is also brought to you by the Michigan High School Athletic Association, promoting the value and values of educational athletics. The Michigan Army National Guard, a proud partner of the MHSAA. The Detroit Athletic Club Foundation's Athlete of the Year Awards. Applications being accepted now through March 6, 2023 for the male and female high school Athletes of the Year. Check out previous winners and download the application today at dacathleteoftheyear.com. And the Basketball Coaches Association of Michigan. Find out more at bcam.org.